For most of you, coming to university is an investment that you're making in your future, often aimed at improving your career prospects in whichever field you decide to go into. As the third most targeted university by top employers in the UK, the University of Nottingham is an ideal place to help further your career prospects. But you're not on your own. The Careers, Employability and Placements team are here to support you every step of the way. And I'm delighted to be joined by Chris Colegate to tell us more. Hi, Chris.
Hello.
So can you start by telling me about that support we mentioned there that you give to students?
Okay, so the support we offer to students is something that we offer to all students at the university, regardless of their year of study, regardless of if they've just arrived or if they're at graduation point. It applies to our undergraduates, our postgraduates, our PhD students, our PGT students, and it's supporting students to understand potential career pathways, helping students who have a very clear idea of what they want to do, to the other end of the spectrum, which is helping students who've got absolutely no idea, and there isn't any right or wrong within that. So we might see somebody at the very beginning of their first year that's got a very clear path in mind, and that student might engage with the service to really sort of think about what types of organisation in an industry they already know what they want to do. In contrast, we might see somebody on the day they graduate who've never engaged with the service, who've only decided to think about it on that particular day, which is, again, it's absolutely fine and it's very common. So the services we provide along the way range from one-to-one careers guidance, so that would be a careers guidance professional sitting down with a student to help them kind of think about their strengths, their interests, and what that may translate to in terms of a career pathway or a type of business. We do lots of workshops with students to help them from more of a recruitability point of view, so how to write good CVs, how to ace an assessment centre, how to manage psychometric tests, all of the things they would experience when they're applying to organisations. There's lots of things we do to help students develop experience as well whilst they're at university, and we'll probably talk about work experience a bit more, but we'll help students navigate their way to things like internships, placement years, volunteering, working with societies, and all that stuff that helps them build a kind of portfolio of experience when they're at university.
And can you tell me a little bit about some of the partners that you work with to help people into their future careers?
We're really fortunate at the University of Nottingham. You mentioned in the introduction there that we are the third most targeted university by leading employers. That really focuses on the bigger graduate recruiters in the UK, and that means they really are keen to spend time on Nottingham's campus to try and attract our students, and they really value Nottingham students and graduates in their business. So that's the big companies. We're really fortunate that we've got some really good partnerships in that space. But we do an awful lot more work with smaller organisations, public sector bodies, companies that might not recruit lots of graduates, like that big kind of cohort of leading graduate recruiters. And we're really fortunate that by having such a broad and kind of deep range of employer partners, we can then provide students with loads of different opportunities to connect with employers, to connect with industries, to understand what industries offer, to network with professionals. That can include the more traditional kind of careers fair that a student might expect. And the way we run careers fairs at the University of Nottingham is that it's not one careers fair, it's not one big careers fair at the University of Nottingham that students have the opportunity to attend. It's a range of sector-specific, more targeted careers fairs that students can experience here. So we run, for example, an engineering, science and technology fair, a law careers fair, a management consulting and finance fair, and various other fairs that allow students to come and attend something that's relevant to them. So our employer partnerships help us develop that programme. In addition, we run a really, really great job and sector insights programme for students. Now, these aren't recruitment events for businesses. This is where we would bring businesses and people from businesses to campus to talk to students in a sort of panel style, typically, about what it's like to work in a particular industry, or what it's like to work in a particular type of business, or what it's like to be a particular type of individual in a particular type of business. And we run these job and sector insight events across a really broad range of different kind of disciplines. Students could come this coming autumn, for example, to a spotlight on advertising, marketing and PR. They could come to a careers in technology event. They can come to a careers in finance, more niche kind of activities. I know, for example, we've got a clinical psychology panel event coming up. So there's a really broad range of things where we'll bring employers to campus, allow students to connect with them and hear from them and really develop that learning of what an industry is like. And then at a more basic level, we do bring employers to campus to do what we would call a recruitment presentation. Lots of those throughout the autumn and spring terms, and that's typically a business coming to talk on a one-to-one basis with a group of students about come and work for my firm, come and work for my organisation. And the final point I make about the employer links is it helps us to really populate what's a fantastic service for students, which is our internal jobs board. It's something called My Career. So every student at the university, alumni have access to My Career, which is a job board with thousands of vacancies that organisations have posted themselves to try and attract Nottingham students either into their placements, their internships or their graduate roles.
And we spoke about this a bit earlier, but you've got some great placement years and years in industry available to students. Mm-hmm. So what is the benefit of them taking up one of those placements?
Placement years massively beneficial to students, and that's something that type of placement is something that's really grown at the University of Nottingham in recent years. We've got currently around 500 students on a placement year in this academic year. We had over 500 last year, so that's a really good number of students that are doing a placement year now at the University of Nottingham. Some students might know placement year as a sandwich year or a year in industry. It essentially means the same thing. So now at Nottingham we've got a really big cohort of students that will do a placement year, which is fantastic. And what that means for all students is most students will know somebody that's doing that or applying for a placement year, and it's much more common and normal now at Nottingham, which is great. Students would typically do a placement year after their penultimate year of study. So if a student is on a 3-year programme, a 3-year English course for example, they might choose to add a placement year in, so they would do their first 2 years, go on placement and then return for their final year. And I think what's really important to mention is students can either join on a course with a placement year advertised, or they can add it in along the way. The vast majority of students can now add that in once they arrive at the university. Placement years, they're not the only type of placement or work experience. So if I can talk a bit about some other options, but placement years are really immensely sort of value adding in terms of students' future employability. We know that students are more likely to be in a graduate level job if they've undertaken a placement year. It has a massive impact on degree performance. So well in advance of 95% of students who return from a placement year will receive a first or a 2-1 after their final year. And placement years, often students are coming back from their placement year with a job offer from that particular employer, which takes a lot of pressure off in the final year and allows students to really focus on that final year degree. So yeah, placement years are very much the norm at Nottingham now, and it's been a really good area of growth for the university. But it isn't the only type of work experience that we support students into. For many, adding that year in isn't something they want to do. They might want to do something like study abroad, for example, instead, which is a fantastic option. They might have other commitments. So for lots of students, they will pursue summer internships, and we can support with that. They might pursue volunteering, part-time work. I think the point I'm trying to make is students have loads of opportunity at the university to develop a kind of portfolio of work experience that's right for them at the right time. So whilst placement years are great, I think there's so much other opportunity for students to build that work experience.
And as you mentioned there about being, Nottingham students being some of the most targeted individuals for whether it's, careers or work experience or internships, what does it mean, receiving this award to be, the third place? What does that actually mean for students on a practical level?
So being the third most targeted university by top employers, that's something that we're really proud of as a university. But what it really means is that these organisations that recruit lots of graduates, this is a university where they're keen to spend their time. And they base that decision on previous rounds of recruitment. They base that decision on how many students did we recruit from that university in the past year, the past 3 years, the past 5 years. And they base that on the calibre of individual they've got in the business that they've seen grow in the business from the University of Nottingham. So they come back to the university to recruit University of Nottingham students and graduates again because they've had a good experience. So that's really what that means. And as I've touched on, it gives us the chance to really think creatively about how we can bring these companies to campus to get them in front of our students and give our students every opportunity to learn about different industries and different employers.
And I think one of the big questions we're seeing a lot at the moment is value for money when it comes to your university degree and, how that degree helps you when you graduate. So what are your thoughts on this in terms of, you're seeing thousands of students graduate each year. Are you noticing kind of any trend in that way?
That's a really good question. So value for money and how that translates to graduate employability, I think those two are completely intrinsically linked, and it is extremely important. So I've got children. I'd be thinking very carefully about when they go to, or when they're at university age, is that investment of money, but also their time. Students deserve a good outcome at the end of their university experience. So we do everything we can to support that. The graduate outcomes, our graduate destinations are always very strong, which is great. So the vast majority of Nottingham students within a 15-month census point will be employed or in further study, which is fantastic. And longer term, we know that our students perform extremely well in terms of what we would call sustained employment. So at 3 and 5 year points, we know Nottingham students perform extremely well. So statistically, Nottingham students are in a good position, and what we do as a service and what we do as a university is everything we can to prepare them for that. Not only in the careers service, but the fact they have an excellent academic experience at the University of Nottingham. The fact they have access to an excellent sporting experience, for example. The university puts everything in front of students that they can build in to really support them from a graduate outcomes point of view, as we would term it. So yeah, return on investment is really important. I think there's often narrative that there's never enough graduate jobs. I've worked at the university for 11 years. The majority of the years I've worked here, we would describe the graduate job market as buoyant, quite buoyant and positive. There are ebbs and flows depending on what's happening in the economy, and sometimes that impacts certain sectors. But more often than not, we are talking to graduate recruiters who haven't been able to fill all of their vacancies, for example. So it's not the narrative that maybe is sometimes there in the press about there aren't enough opportunities is not always completely accurate.
And as you said, there's really good employment beyond, graduation, and you're saying that people are sustaining their jobs 3 to 5 years into their career. Is there help for people along the way if they are still looking for job support? Is it true that you can kind of go back to the university and get support at any time?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. So we're really proud of the fact we do offer career support for life. That's something that, we're really happy to offer to alumni of the university. We've got some really great stories where we know former students, graduates, alumni have reconnected with the careers service where they're potentially looking for that first job change, even that second or third job change, and they will access support from our careers teams and careers advisors, for example, to help them navigate that journey. So yeah, career support for life is something that we offer at the university.
That's great. Thank you very much. And there's a whole host of information available on the website about careers, which you can visit using the link in the schedule below.